Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Go ahead. Robert, man, sounding strong over there. Hallelujah. We come before you on today in the mighty, matchless name, magnanimous name of Yahusha HaMashiach, the only begotten of the Father, who's full of grace and truth. We appreciate him on today. We know that in him we live. He is our only life, our only substance of life. We know that he has given us instructions on how we're to live this life. It's not a free fall. It's not everybody's going to do whatever they feel right in their own eyes. There was a time where that's how Israel, Yasharel, that's how they were living, where everybody was doing what was right in their own eyes. And it's almost like that today, it seems like. Everybody's doing whatever's right in their own eyes. But he has given us clear instructions on how we're to live our lives, and we definitely want to keep that on today and be faithful unto him, because we know Torah does teach. When you teach Torah and you live in Torah teaches judgment, mercy, and faith. That's what you're going to get from Torah. When you teach Torah, which is the instructions, which is the law. And a lot of people feel that the law is done away with, and if that is true, if the law is done away with, then there is no sin. There is no sin. No law, no sin. And a lot of people are running around talking about grace, but grace is not a license to sin. He says Shaul said in Romans chapter 6, I believe it, shall we continue in sin that what? Grace may abound? And then he said, Yah forbid. Yah forbid. So he doesn't want us to sin. He doesn't want us to give in to our own will and our own way. And he has given us a path and a way in which to walk. And that's what we have to do on today. Now our one of our foundational scriptures that we have, which is in Yahuchanan chapter 4 and verse number 22. This is one of our foundation scriptures, even when you go to our YouTube page, and you'll see it as one of our scriptures. And it is, the words of Yahusha, which kind of offends people. A lot of people, it shouldn't surprise me today, because a lot of people were offended by him back in the days of his flesh when he was on earth. His disciples even came to him and says, don't you know you offended them? I mean, his words can be very offensive to some, and many of us have succumbed to teaching with itching ears, and we want the teacher to tell us something good. Don't show us the error of our way. And usually when people don't want to be shown the error of their way, it's probably because they don't want to change. That's why don't show the error of my way, because I don't plan on changing. And that sometimes, we have to be very careful of that mindset. Yahushua Mashiach, who the world calls Jesus Christ, is not afraid to look you straight in the eye and deal with you and talk to you. He does have mercy. Indeed, he has mercy. And we see that in the 8th chapter of Yahuchanan, right? We see that he had mercy on the woman that was what? Caught in adultery. And he said, where are your accusers? And because before he said that, he says, you that is without sin, let you cast the first stone. And no man could cast a stone at her, because once they checked themselves, they knew, hey, man, I can't accuse nobody of sin when I'm in sin. So they left, and Yahusha said, well, where's your accusers? And she said, they're gone. Nobody could accuse me. And he says, I'm not going to condemn you. The life she was living, he says, I'm not going to condemn you. But what did he say? Go and sin no more. That's mercy. That's great. When people want to know what is grace, what is grace? You can give them clear examples. Actually, that's an example of mercy, really. He had mercy on her because he could have condemned her, because the only one that could throw a stone at her was Yahusha. He was the only one because he knew no sin. So he could have chucked a stone at her and knocked her out. But he says, no, I'm not going to do it. He says, I'm not condemning you. He says, just go and sin no more. And that's the mercy of Yah. So in Yahuchanan 4:22, he says, you worship, you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Yahudim. And for some, they don't want to look at the Yahudim and trying to find salvation in the Yahudim. If he wanted to say salvation is of me, and we do know that we have to be immersed in his name and be filled with the Ruach HaKodesh. That's the instructions he's given us. We do know that. The only name that we get immersed in is Yahusha's name. And I don't know if you guys known it, but if you check a little history, what's his name? John Bynum, or I can't think of his name right now. Something like Bynum or Bonham. Bonham? Anyway, he's the one that brought his ministry was over across the waters, but it came over here to America. Branham, there you go, Branham, thank you. And it came over here to America, and people were baptizing in the name of Branham and in the name of Jesus Christ. And Branham, yeah, they was immersing people in the name of Branham and the name of Jesus Christ. So Branham ain't died for nobody. And he didn't get up out of the grave after 3 days. So you don't even have to say. He was a teacher and a preacher. They said he's the one that brought the charismatic and the speaking in tongues over here to the United States, because they didn't have it over here before Branham came over here. That's what some historians are saying. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you can do your own research and find out. But yeah, Branham was his name. Very charismatic. And so it's difficult for some people to see that Yahusha said, if you want deliverance or you want to be rescued, you have to be with a people. You have to be with the people. You're not going to be off by yourself doing your own thing. You're going to have to be in the people. And when you get to Romans chapter 11, Shaul brings out, anybody knows what Romans chapter 11 is? Shaul brings out the grafting in Romans chapter 11. He brings the grafting in. And he's telling the Romans, the Gentiles, you have to be grafted in to Yasharel. He said the natural branches were broken off because of their unbelief, because of their sinful ways, because of idolatry, because of sin. He just broke off the natural branches. And so the Gentiles, when they come in to Yasharel, they're coming in as a wild olive tree being grafted into a good olive tree, which is Yasharel. And so Shaul gives that example in Romans chapter 11. So if you want to be delivered or saved, I want to be rescued, as we see how things are going to gradually get worse and worse and worse. But if you want to be rescued and delivered, you have to be in Yasharel. You have to be where the Yahudim are. And because when he returns, that's who he's returning for. We always say the church, the church, they didn't even use that word or that pronunciation. They called it the congregation. And he called the congregation out of Yasharel, because he says, I didn't come but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And then he sent out his disciples to go out and find the lost sheep of Israel. And that's who he died for, and that's who he came for. But then when he comes back, he's coming back for that remnant of Yasharel. Only a remnant is going to return. And then all of those who are grafted in. And that's why Yahusha said in Yahuchanan 4:22, you don't really know what you're worshiping. Even the Yahudim back in that day, they were more into the letter of Moses' law, Moses' teaching. They were more into the letter than they were into the spirit of what Moses taught. Because when you study Torah, you study his law, it is spiritual, because that Torah and those instructions, that teaching, has to be ingrained in your conscience, in your mind, in your heart. It has to be ingrained in your spirit. Because let's go to Matif Yahu, which is Matthew, Matif Yahu chapter 23 and verse number 23. Because when we teach Torah, he's going to tell you what is the weightier things of Torah. And this is what's got to get into your ruach. You can't just deal with the letter of the law. The letter of the law must become spiritual. And when the law becomes spiritual unto you, it gets into your consciousness. It gets into my mind. It gets into my consciousness. And it teaches me, every one of us should be a Torah scroll. Let's think about that. Every one of us should be a Torah scroll. That new covenant, when he brings the new covenant, like it's spoken in Jeremiah, is it 31:31, and in Hebrews chapter 8, verse 8, 9, and 10, the new covenant, where is it going to be written? On our hearts. The new covenant is going to be written on our hearts and our minds. He's going to write it on our hearts and our minds. So the Torah has to become, it has to get into your consciousness. And didn't King Daud say, I meditate on your Torah day and night. It's my meditation. That's what I think about. I think about Torah. I think about his instructions, because his instruction teaches me righteousness. I think about the Torah. I think about how he gave it unto his people. He gave it unto a nation so that we would know how to represent him amongst ourselves. So you have to be a Torah scroll. I have to be a Torah scroll. If we are Torah scrolls, then we know what Abba says, we know what our Father says, and then we know how to treat one another. We know how to live amongst one another. You could go, like when we go to tabernacles, we just know how to live amongst one another. There's nothing but peace. Shalom. You're in the community of Yah's people. His law is ingrained in my heart and in my mind. So the weightier things of the law, we can't get away from teaching the law. Yahusha did not get away from teaching the law. If you don't believe in Torah and you don't believe in teaching Torah, then, and you say you got Jesus Christ, you don't need Torah, then you got another Christ. You have a different Christ. You don't have Yahusha Mashiach of this book. You got another Christ. And you can hear it in people's conversation. I mean, you hear it in their conversation what Christ they're following. because many of them will tell you they're following a Christ without law. Well, Yahushua Mashiach was Torah made flesh. He was Torah made flesh. So if I'm a dude without Torah, I don't want Torah. I don't want the law. I don't want law. All I want is Jesus. Well, you can't separate Yahusha or Jesus. You can't separate him from Torah because that's who he is. If you believe Yahuchanan 1 in verse 14, I believe it is, where it says the word was what? It was made flesh. So if I believe that Torah or the word was made flesh, how do you separate Yahusha from Torah when the word was made flesh? You can't. It's foolishness to think about having Yahusha but no law. That's just foolishness. It's just foolishness. But you have people who want to follow that line of thought, and if they do, then you're going to have to deal with the error of your way when you see them, because we all have an appointment. But in Matthew 23, Yahu, chapter 23, verse 20, let's look at the weightier matters of the law. What does the law teach us? He says, woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law. What are the weightier matters of the law? Judgment, mercy, faith. These ought ye to have done. What should you have done? You should have understood judgment, mercy, and faith. So when I teach Torah and I teach the law, I should be picking up, and that's why you got to get the spirit of it. You can't just go by the letter of it. Well, and you know how we do, because I'm good at it. I do it. Chapter and verse. Book, chapter, and verse. That's how we do it. Give me the book, chapter, and verse. I ain't going nowhere without book, chapter, and verse. But you'll omit the weightier matters of the law. If all you're doing is just reading the letter of the law, and that's what Shaul was trying to say, was trying to get across, that killeth. The letter of the law killeth, but the spirit, if I can see the weightier matters and get the spirit of the law, that's what's going to give me life. It's going to give me life. So the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith, these ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. So he says, don't undo what? Yeah, hey, don't undo that, but you just have to understand the weightier matters of the law. I shouldn't just teach law just to get tithes. Now, wait a minute. You mean people teach law just to get tithes? No, there's not such a thing as that, is there? No, there can't be. People going to teach law just to get tithes? Yeah. Yeah. So he's saying, yeah, you're paying your tithe. Yeah, that's good, but you're omitting the weightier. The law teaches judgment, mercy, and faith. That's what it teaches. So I should be able to see the weightier things of the law. And in order for me to see that, it's got to become spiritual. It's got to become spiritual unto me. And so we can't do without it because the law teaches us what sin is. It does teach us what sin is. Yah is not so concerned about the color of your shoes or whether you have a shirt and tie on. You can't come up here unless you got a suit on and a tie. Or we get caught up in those traditions, and we miss out on the weightier part of the law that's teaching us how to live. We want to put law on our sisters, but then turn around and say that there is no law. So how can you force our sisters to look a certain way and then turn around and say you ain't under no law? No, there people don't do that. No, are there people out there that'll do that? You got to be kidding me. Yeah, there is. we should present ourselves. How are we supposed to present our bodies? We're supposed to present our bodies what? A living sacrifice that's supposed to be holy, which is set apart, acceptable unto who? Acceptable unto Yahuwah. So when you get such dogma on you brothers can't even go, you can't even come up in the sanctuary unless you have a suit and a tie on. You get so dogma with that. But then you want to say, hey, no, you can't teach no law. If you're going to teach law, get out of here. Wait a minute. What are you calling that? Well, that's just a standard. Well, the law gives us a standard. It does give us a standard. So we have to know how to present ourselves before him at the same time. I gotta know how to present myself before the Most High Yah. And so we want to look at, as we get closer and closer to Pesach. Pesach is a command. And if you disobey a command, then you are in transgression. So it's a command. It's a command. So let's look at Exodus chapter 12 and verse 14, and then I want to read verse 24. Then we're going down to verse 42, and then verse 47. So Exodus chapter 12 and 14. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to Yahuwah throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance until Christ come. Okay, so that's verse number 14. Oh, it does say forever. It is an ordinance that is supposed to be kept forever. And when some people say, well, you can't keep it unless you're in Jerusalem, well, the first 40 times they kept it, they weren't in Jerusalem. And the space from Joshua to King Daud was about 400 years. They didn't keep it in Jerusalem. They kept the feast, but they didn't keep it in Jerusalem because it was King Daud, that conquered the city of Jebus, and he called it Jerusalem. And so King Daud conquered Jerusalem, and so that's when they started to keep it in Jerusalem. But before then, wherever they were, they kept Pesach. Because in actuality, where are you to keep Pesach? In actuality, where did they keep Pesach? The initial Pesach. And even in the wilderness, where did they keep it? They kept it in their tents, in their houses. That's where they kept it. So even if you went to Jerusalem, you'd have everybody in Jerusalem keeping it in their house, and you would find a family or somebody that you can go and be with in Jerusalem if you went to Jerusalem, because it was commanded of the men. They had to make that travel to Jerusalem, and so they would find a house, or they would get with the people. There would be a place where they kept Pesach. So in the time of our Messiah, his last Pesach, he told the disciples, go on out to the street, you'll see a man with a water jug or something like that, I think it was. He says, go and ask him to make ready for the Messiah so he can keep the Pesach. And they went and they found a man walking down the street with the water, right? And asked him, and he showed him the upper room that was prepared. And so he kept it with his 12 disciples when everybody else in Jerusalem was keeping the Pesach. But he kept it with his 12 disciples. So verse number 24, Exodus 12:24, he says, and ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. When the Most High Yah says something, one time should be enough. You would think. You would think all he has to do is say it once. But because Yasharel is so hard-headed and stiff-necked, and we just, what did he say? So Yah has to say it again. So he says it here again. You were to observe this for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons, and it's an ordinance forever. Now, verse number 42, he says in verse number 42, notice now, it is a night to be much observed, and who are we observing it unto? To Yahuwah. We're observing it unto him. So some man could come along and tell you you don't have to keep it. And we're doing it unto Yah. That's what it says here. We're doing it unto him. So actually it's his, and it's in this same chapter here. It is his Passover. I think that's up before verse 14. I think it's like 12, 11, 12. I think that's what it says. Or 13. It is his Passover. So when we observe it unto Yahuwah for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. This is that night of Yahuwah to be observed of all the children of Yasharel in their generations. And that generations is plural. And it's forever, so it goes on. Even Yahusha said, I'm not going to drink of the cup until when, because he's going to do it again. But he ain't going to do it until he does it with us. I mean, so can you imagine that? He's still going to keep Pesach. Well, I thought he was. He is the Pesach, but he's going to keep the Pesach, and he's going to keep it with us. That's special because Yahusha knew with his father, Abba. I mean, a command is a command that we're not supposed to forsake. We're just supposed to keep it. And it becomes very powerful because it's Yah's Passover, and it's observant that we do unto him. One more verse, and that's verse 47. All the congregation of Yasharel shall keep it, which leaves nobody out. If you're Yasharel, you're supposed to keep it. Just supposed to keep it. Shouldn't be any questions to ask. Now a lot of people say, well, I didn't know I was Yasharel. I didn't know I was. So, we never did it. Or some people will say, well, how can you prove? Can you prove that you are Yasharel? And then some people did you do a DNA search? Yeah, I did a DNA search. Not according to you, but I did do a DNA search. Where did you do it? Deuteronomy, names, ancestry. That's the search I did. When they talk about DNA, yeah, I did Deuteronomy, names, ancestry. So when I look at what Deuteronomy says in the 28th chapter, all you got to do is find those people. You find those people of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, that's Yasharel. That's Yasharel. Because there's not a nation of people that can identify with all of those curses. There's only one nation of people that can identify with all those curses. And he says it's going to be a sign upon you for how long? Forever. You're going to carry that sign. You're going to carry that sign. So that names ancestry. When you look at Deuteronomy 28, that's going to name ancestry. And so when you find out and he awakens you to that, then you got to keep the Passover. You're supposed to keep the Passover, and there's really no excuse. Now, it's no excuse because the people keep EASTER faithfully annually, but they don't keep the Passover, where the Passover is given to us in Torah. So this is a command that was given from Yah. Now in Yahuchanan 14:15, Yahuchanan 14:15, anybody know what that says? If you love me, you're going to keep my commandments, or you're going to guard my commandments. You're going to keep, if you love me. So if I forsake the commandments or I don't guard the commandments, by definition of the Torah scroll, I don't love him. I know a lot of people say, oh, I love him. Oh, how I love you. We used to sing that song. Oh, how I love Jesus. Yeah, we'd be rocking in church and everything. He says, well, if you love me, keep my commandments. It's that simple. It's not difficult. El Drar was saying, because Bishop Soto said it, if I had to have a P, put a P, and push a P with my nose from Davenport to Des Moines, I would do it. Didn't he say that? Yeah. If I had to, if that was the only way I could get in, that's what I would do. I would do it if he gave me that. He didn't say that. All he says is keep my commandments. That's all. If you love me, keep my commands. Keep my commands. And Yahuchanan tells us that his commandments are not grievous. It's not grievous. It's not difficult. He's not putting anything difficult on our lives. And the commands and his Torah actually teaches us what sin is. So if I don't know what his commands are, then I'm not going to know what sin is. I have to know what his commands are, so I know what sin is, because that's what I want to stay away from, because I want to be pleasing unto him. And why is this Passover so important? Because they had Passover before they came out of Egypt, before they came out of captivity. They had Passover. And every year signifies Passover of coming out of captivity. And we are getting very, very close to coming out of captivity. This country is, it's going to see its end. We love to think that the glory days are coming back and everything is just going to be peachy keen and everything. But we just started a new year. On April 8th, that night was the new moon. And I gotta read something. April 8th, that night was a new moon. That was the beginning of months to us. It was the new moon. Every new moon is the beginning of the month. But this new moon was the beginning of the year. So this was a time of celebration. It ain't no December 31st, January 1st. That's not our new year. And I know there's all kind of customs and practices that people do and everything, and it's not even our new year. Well, I never knew it, but now that I know better, I'm going to do better. If I don't know, then I can't do. But now that I know better, now I'm going to do better, because this is the beginning of the month for us. So we just had a new year. And I said, Happy New Year. I sent that out there. Happy New Year. You know, this is a special time for us. And so I got this from, and thank you, Aki Damian McNeil. And Dean Parker was with us over there. But in the book of Psalms, chapter 81, and I'm going to start with verse number 1. I'll start with verse number 1, because this is something I can do. I can make a joyful noise. It's not so much harmony. It's not so much having a voice like Stevie Wonder. You know, brothers used to sing back in the day. They don't sing anymore. They got lyrics and stuff, and they rapping. Who's a popular singer now? Who is it? Usher? Does he sing or does he rap? I don't know. Usher? What does he do? Huh? Non-Christian. Is it Usher? Does Usher sing or what does he do? Does he rap? What does he do? He sings? He's R&B. Okay, so Usher. Who else? What's that one guy's name? John somebody or? Legend. He's a singer. I mean, you have to really think about it. Now, when I was growing up, they had all kind of singers, man. You just start running them off because that's how they did. They sung. They hung a tune. They was singing. But this. You read verse 1 here. This is something that I can do because it's a joyful noise. It's not a harmony. It's, I used to want to be like, Barry White. It was deep baritone kind of Luther Vandross and some of those other ones. Just have that type of voice and sing and everything. But no, I can't. Stevie Wonder and some of those other ones. But a joyful noise, make a joyful noise. So verse number 1, sing aloud unto Elohim our strength, make a joyful noise unto the Elohim of Yaakov. There's that joyful noise. Because it might not sound good to us, but he likes it. Because you're singing unto him. So he likes it. And it comes from your heart. Thank you. It comes from your heart. Take a psalm, and what we would call today lyrics, take a psalm or a poem, and bring hither the timbrel, the pleasant harp, and the psaltery. Verse number 3, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast day. So every new moon is a solemn feast day where we should be blowing the trumpet and singing and making a joyful noise. It is a time to rejoice. And we just had that September 8th that night, April 8th into that night, April 9th, and that was the beginning of our new year where we should have been really celebrating and blowing the shofar, the trumpet, the shofar, and just really blowing it out and just thanking him that he allowed us to see another year. Remember, Yasharel is set apart, or Yasharel is holy. Yasharel is set apart. Because if we did what is commanded of us to do in the book, we'd be set apart. Because we would have been out blowing the shofar and singing and having a good time. Think about, what y'all doing? What y'all up to? And we're saying, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. People be looking at you because we're set apart. We're set apart. We don't celebrate your new year because Yahusha didn't. He kept Torah. That's why he told us, guard those commands. Keep my command. Now, if you love me, you're going to keep my commands. You're going to guard my commands if you love me. And then he says, for this is a statute for Yasharel, because Yasharel is set apart. He didn't say it was a statute for the Romans. He didn't say it was a statute for the Egyptians or the Philistines, because in King Dawood's day, their arch enemy was the Philistines. I mean, you had Goliath. He was a Philistine. And King Dawood said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? He going to defy the armies of the living Elohim. Who is this? He wasn't afraid of him. So their arch rival was the Philistine. But he didn't give this statute unto the Philistines. He said, Yasharel, this is for you. Because if we did it the way the book says, or Torah, if we're a Torah scroll, then, man, y'all strange. Y'all celebrate the new year in the springtime. Yeah, because that's our new year. We don't celebrate it in the wintertime. Ain't no watch service. Ain't no, you gonna have, oh my goodness. And I used to believe it. I'm nervous, waiting on midnight, and then midnight comes, made it. Well, the new year started way over in the east. I mean, we're late. But we're thinking that where I'm at my time, this is it, I mean, we took it very personal and everything like that. But when you really look at it, the new year starts way over. New Zealand, I think that's where it starts, and it just rolls across from the east all the way over here. I think Hawaii's probably the last ones. They're at the end of the day. Then it starts a new day over there, kind of goes around. So we're waiting at midnight, the stroke of midnight and all that. But, I mean, we did it because that's what, we were just moving in the knowledge that we knew. But now that I know better, then I'm going to do better. So he tells us that he wants us to keep his commands. Now, I want to ask you, because we're coming up on unleavened bread. These are the days of unleavened bread. In Torah, when it says the days of unleavened bread, it's right at the new year. When the new year starts, we're into the days of unleavened bread. Now, Pesach is not until the 14th day of the new year. Then the 15th day to the 21st day is, 15th day to the 21st day is unleavened bread, which is 7 days. So Pesach and unleavened bread in the totality is 8 days. But the preparation leading up to that, the days of preparation, they started to get the leaven out of their houses. And so when we look at our house, our temple, we have to really self-reflect and self-examination and really look for any kind of leaven that we might have in us. Because when we eat unleavened bread for 7 days, what we're telling Yahusha, Abba Yah, what we're saying is, I'm getting the sin out of my life. And so by me eating unleavened bread, I'm confessing to you, confessing to those around me that I'm getting the sin out of my life. I don't have anything, no kind of agent that's going to cause me to sin. So is it just for 7 days? No, because when you do it, remember, a lot of people are looking at the letter of the law, but what are we supposed to be looking at? The spirit of the law, because the law is spiritual. So getting rid of the leaven out of my life, like Shaul said, let's get that real quick. Galatians 2:18. Let's get that real quick. Because once I get the leveling out of my life, I'm doing a search in my life. I'm getting rid of the agent of sin, things that will cause me to sin. Shaul says we're not to make any provision for the flesh. So I don't want to, as I'm going through this and I'm cleaning up and I'm getting rid of leaven, I don't want to, like Shaul says, because some people say, well, I'm just going to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Then after that, I'm going right back to my life to where I was before. Wait a minute, time out. So that's when people look at the letter of it and not looking at the spirit of the law, the spirit of Torah. Because speaking to me spiritually, when I clean myself up, Yahusha gave us an example, didn't he? He says, if an unclean spirit goes out of a man, right? Yeah. He goes out and he goes into, desert places and things like that. And he can't find no place to rest. So what does he say? I'm going back. Well, you did unleavened bread for 7 days. You cleaned yourself up, got rid of the evil spirit, and he couldn't find nobody to rest in. So he says, I'm going back. And when he goes back, what does he see? The house is what? Swept and clean, because you got rid of all that leaven. He sees a house that is swept and clean. And then he says, hey, I wish I could whistle. Yeah. And he gets how many more? 7 more demons. And he said, this house is clean and swept because they got all the leaven out. And so now you got 8 that's back in that body. And so that's why we got to look at it spiritually and say, hey, look, I'm trying to clean up myself. I'm getting rid of, there's the agent, because leaven was an agent that caused you to do things wrong. I might not be committing a sin outright, but the agent is there so that if I'm ever in the position, boom, it's going to happen. Because, well, man, I don't know how I did it, man. All I know is, next thing I know, we was waking up. No. You know how you did that. I don't know how my pants came down. Oh, no, yeah. You know how they came down. Because what you do is you put yourself into that position. The agent is it's in your mind and in your heart. So you do things subconsciously. You move in such a way to where, well, I couldn't help myself. Really? So if I'm getting the leaven out of my house, so what I'm doing is I'm cleaning up. I'm getting all that leaven. I'm getting rid of the agent that causes sin in my life. Yahusha gave us the example of 3 measures of meal, where he says that a woman had 3 measures of meal, and she put leaven in until what? The whole was leaven. And yeah. So we have to look at that agent. What is causing me to do a certain thing? Because we're going to find out that I might not be able to find chapter and verse, but I found one. And we're going to look at it tonight. Because a lot of people are just looking at the letter of the law, and they're not looking at the spirit. They're not looking at it has to be spiritual. So what does Shaul say here in Galatians 2:18? For if I build again the things that I destroyed. Now, he's not talking about destroying law. He's not talking about destroying the law of Moses. There is a law in his members, and when we deal with Shaul's writings, we have to understand Shaul is talking more than just the law of Moses, because he even said it in Romans, the 7th chapter. He says, I find another law in my members. And it wars against the law of my mind, and it brings me into the captivity to the law of sin, which is where? In my members. Because he says, when I would do good, evil's present with me, because there's a law of sin that's in my members. So I have to know which law he's talking about. Because a lot of people want to go to the next verse and think that he's destroying the law of Moses. No, he's trying to destroy the law of sin that's in his member. Because we have to be dead to what? Because he says sin can, in Romans 6, he says sin cannot have any dominion upon you. You should not be a slave to sin. It should not dominate you. Sin shouldn't dominate you. So I don't want to be subject to the law of sin. I want to be dead to the law of sin so that I can be alive unto Elohim. Because a lot of people think that Paul is destroying the law, and people don't want to live under the law, but Paul was dealing with more than one law. I don't think there's a bishop, a pastor, a superintendent, you put your title on them, I don't care what it is, a theologian or anybody today that could match Shaul when it comes to Torah and dealing with how he knew himself and the mysteries and stuff like that. I don't think nobody could. He'd talk all of our top theologians today, or in any organization, PAW, PCIF, PCAFI, UPC, your top person. And Shaul would just run circles around him. Because the people today who we think are so gifted with Torah and anointed, they don't know Torah. Not like Shaul knows Torah. So Shaul could run circles around them, and they wouldn't even know it, because he did it in his. Because when he talks about, and let's read this, 18 and 19. For if I build again the things which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. And he's talking about destroying what's in the flesh. For I through the law am dead to the law. So there's two laws he's talking about. For I through the law am dead to the law, that I might live unto Elohim. So if I'm dead to the law of sin, now I can live unto the law of Elohim. But I'm not going to be able to live to the law of Elohim if I'm fulfilling the lust of the flesh, because he goes on to say that. If you're in same book here, if you fulfill the lust of the flesh, and maybe you know how people do spring cleaning? We need to do some house cleaning in Galatians, the 5th chapter, because it talks about the works of the flesh. So, you do have a law in your flesh, and it wars against the law of Elohim. But I got to know which law he's talking about. And I can't, every time Shaul says law, I can't just say, oh, he's talking about the law of Musha. Not all the time. We have to know when he's talking about the law of Musha and when he's talking about the law of sin. When he's talking about the law, the Roman law. All right? So once I clean up myself and I'm getting rid of all the leaven, I have a clean house, I don't want to bring that agent back in that's going to cause me to do that sin. I don't want to do that. So what is sin? To you, what is sin? Anybody. This could be interactive. What is sin? I mean, specifically, what acts that you do is sin? I know some sins that I committed. I looked at smoking Newports, smoking drugs, doing drugs and everything. That's sin. That's sin. Well, show me book, chapter, and verse where it says don't smoke crack cocaine or don't smoke marijuana. Stop smoking blunts. Show me book, chapter, and verse. Come on. Huh? Okay, the body's the temple of the... Yes. No. Yeah. But what I would do is, things that you eat like bread. We usually eat bread and stuff, bagels, bread, stuff. That needs to be, because you're not supposed to eat that for 7 days. So you don't want to be tempted with, or if you got something that you're routinely eating and it has leaven in it, yeah, I'm going to get rid of that. Because I'm for 7 days, 8 days actually, but for 7 days, I don't even want to be tempted with it. I don't want to go to my bread box and see bread and bagels and sweet rolls and donuts. So I'm getting rid of all that. Yeah, you'll just automatically.
Yeah, well, back to that, when you're talking about the love and the agent, it's right in front of you, so it's available. So it's easier for you to sin.
Yeah, because we're not supposed to eat nothing with leaven for 7 days. It's just unleavened bread. So I would do that, yes.
Can I go a little farther? Besides food, something that keeps me from prayer would be watching a certain program, even before I start my day in prayer. Is that a type of leaven?
I mean, if it causes you to, if it interferes with your prayer, because we'll keep hold of that. Keep hold of that, okay? Don't forget that. Hopefully I'll get to that tonight to answer that question. So what is sin? We know that sexual immorality is sin. We know that. Fornication, adultery, those are sin, right? You don't want to steal, you don't want to rob, don't want to steal nobody, can't stick up nobody. That's sin. We don't we used to, going back a few years, if anybody purchased a television brought into their home, that you was a sinner. You committed sin. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, I never felt convicted over a television until I was working at Alcoa. And this man that I met, and he came in to Alcoa and said he didn't work Saturday. And they hired him. But he never worked Saturday because when I was hourly, he didn't work Saturday. So when I became salary, we couldn't schedule him for Saturday because that was his agreement when he came in there. But this man was, he went to a assembly in Taylor, Illinois, Taylor Ridge, or somewhere around in that area is where he went to an assembly. And they were very, very strict. So he was a Hawkeye fan. So we was talking about the Iowa Hawkeyes. It was in the basketball season, they was playing ball, and they was, and I was following. And so, this is before I became salary. So I said, man, the Hawkeyes, we was talking about the Hawkeyes, and did you see that game last night? And I was talking about, and so I asked him, did you see that game? Because I know he was a Hawkeye fan. I know he's seen the game. He says, no, I didn't see it. He says, we don't have television. We don't believe in televisions. Oh, whoa. And I mean, we had TVs almost in every room, But he said, we don't believe in TVs. So, and that took me back to when we were children under Bishop A.L. Boyd, because if you had a TV in your house, you was sinning. But I mean, I'm working at Alcoa now, so that's been a few years ago. And he says, we don't believe in TVs. And I said, you guys don't believe in, you don't have a TV in your house? No, we don't. Our congregation, we don't believe in TVs, so we don't have them. I listened to it on the radio. I said, oh, okay. At that time, I felt kind of, man, this guy's better than me. I just felt his standards were higher than mine, And I was going to Christ Apostolic Church, which a lot of people say, man, y'all have such high standards, But I felt that his standards were higher than mine, so I felt a little, kind of got to me, Because you know how we felt. When it came to salvation and Christians, we were the top. I don't know if y'all felt like that, but I thought, because I thought if you came to church, I mean, at one time I was thinking, this is about the only church in the Quad Cities you can go to and be saved. I mean, that's how we felt. So our standards were so high here. So when he said that, I felt it's kind of strange. So hold on to that. That leveling agent, things that will cause you to sin. And those are things that we have to get out. But what is sin? What is sin? Like I said, we used to say television. People say, for women, if you don't wear dresses, if you have a pair of slacks, pants, shorts, culottes, whatever, you're sinning. I mean, we used to feel like that. We put a dress code on them. If you got a pair of pants in your house, get rid of them, burn them up. And then we have sisters or mothers that would tell the daughters in the church, yeah, when I got saved, I burned up all my pants. So folks get nervous, and so that all they got was dresses. And it was so instilled in us, and it was such a indelible mark on us that if our sisters even went to the store to look at a pair of pants, I almost sinned. I went to the rack and I seen a pair of pants and I was going to buy. It was in my heart I was going to buy them. And we go to tell the pastor and confess to the pastor. I went to the rack and seen a pair of pants, and I thought, man, but I want to let you know, Pastor, I didn't buy them. Because to us, the way we were taught, we would think that was sin. So what is sin? I mean, so we have to look at what is sin. Huh? Okay, well, let's go there. Yahuchanan, first Yahuchanan, chapter 3 and verse number 4. First Yahuchanan 3 and verse number 4. Whoso committeth sin, what does he do? Transgress also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So sin, so when I look at sin, I have to look at the fact that if I do this sin, I'm transgressing his law. If I do this sin. So is that the totality of sin? Am I fully defining sin when I say sin is the transgression of the law? Am I fully defining sin? Because if I'm saying sin is a transgression of the law, what must I know? I have to know the law. I definitely got to know the law, because I know if I transgress that law, then I've sinned. And so I study Torah. I want to understand Torah. I want to understand the righteousness in the law, because some of this stuff is so sophomoric, but you can't offer up sacrifices today. You can't even do a meal. Do you know a meal sacrifice has nothing to do, a meal offering has nothing to do with the animal? They had meal offerings. Yeah, they had meal offerings, and they had peace offerings, and they had oblations, and they had all of that. But we can't do that now because there is no temple, and that's what they're trying to do over there. They want to build the third temple, but there is no temple, and there's no Levites that we know of to do the offering or to offer up the sacrifice. We can't. No. Yeah, you can't. It had to go. The Levites were the ones. I've got a peace offering, and you would give it to the Levite, and he would go through the ordinances. I have a meal offering. I want to offer this up to Abba Yad. You go to the priest, and he would go through all the ordinance, all the steps, and he would do it. And then there was sin offerings and sin sacrifices. If you committed a sin, then and I did say at one time that confession was of the Roman Catholic construct of Christianity. And I remember saying that. That's wrong. That's wrong. Actually, they got confession from us. Because if you go back in Torah, when he gave Torah, he told them they had to confess. And they would confess to the Levite, to the priest, and they would give up their offering and their sacrifice. So confession started in Yasharel. A lot of the other Gentile and their gods and stuff, they weren't dealing with confession, because confession for us, it cleans us up, and confession is something that you do to, hopefully confession is something that keeps you from doing it again. So when you look at confession was actually in Yasharel. It was given unto Yasharel. And then we see that with Joshua, and who was it? They had the Philistines' garments and some wedges of gold and stuff. I forget his name. Was it Achan? Achan. And so Joshua says, confess unto me and tell Yahuwah what you've done. So when you look at, because I misspoke, and I'm going to say I misspoke, because I said it didn't, the way they do it, when they go into that booth and everything, that's their creation. But if you look at, just the fact that you're confessing, that was given to Yasharel. So there's things that we can't do under Torah. So when it talks about sin is a transgression of the law, then I have to look at what is the righteousness that's in the law. I have to look at what is the law teaching me that is spiritual. I have to look at the righteousness in it. So in Romans chapter 8 verse number 4. So this is Shaul, and he says that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but what are we walking after? The Ruach. It's spiritual. It has to become spiritual because I'm walking after the spirit, not after the flesh. So if the law becomes spiritual unto me, then I'm going to fulfill the righteousness of it. Because the law is going to teach me. It's going to teach me spiritual things. The law is going to teach me what sin is. It's going to teach me what sin is. So when I can't offer up the sacrifices, and a lot of people say, we ain't on the law. Oh, you want the law? Well, then where's your sacrifice? Well, I mean, when people say that, that's such a, I mean, that's not even a kindergarten argument. I mean, you haven't even got into school yet. I mean, you can't just, no, but the law teaches us what he expects of us when he teaches us how to live with our neighbors, how to live as a nation, how to live as a community. He teaches us. We have to understand the righteousness of it because the righteousness of the law has to be fulfilled in me. I have to look at the righteousness of it and then do what is right, because if I sin, then I just broke law. I just transgress. So if the law is telling me that, for example, there's a diet that you should have. You should have a diet. You're not allowed to eat everything. That's just what the law teaches me. Well, if I go against that, then I'm transgressing his law. And then the law teaches me that a man is not to lie with mankind as he does with womankind. That's what the law teaches. So when I read that and understand that, I realize, hey, a man's supposed to be a man. A man's supposed to lie with a woman, and he's not supposed to lie with a man. That's just what law teaches. The law teaches us that those who are married aren't supposed to break wedlock, commit adultery. So when I understand that, then the righteousness of it becomes spiritual unto me. I know that in my mind and my heart, I can't do those things. So the law teaches us, and so the righteousness of it, now the righteousness of the law has to be fulfilled in me. It has to start with me, and it has to fulfill in me. So I can't do away with the law. Then in, Philippians chapter 3 and verse number, let's start with verse number 4, and I'm going to read down to verse number 6. But Philippians chapter 3, verse number 4. Though I might also have confidence in the flesh, if any other man thinketh that he hath whereof he might trust in the flesh, I more. So he goes on to explain. He was circumcised the 8th day of the stock of Yasharel, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as touching the law, a Pharisee. Now, notice now, he's not speaking in past tense. He's speaking presently. As touching the law, a Pharisee, concerning zeal, persecuting the church. Now listen to this. Touching the righteousness which is in the law, he was what? Blameless. How would he be able to say that if he didn't know what law is? Because he's saying the law teaches me righteousness. As touching the righteousness in it, hey, I'm blameless. We have to understand when Shaul was teaching Timotheus, Titus, and all he had was Old Testament. All he had was the law of Moses and the prophets. That's what he had. The Torah and the Tanakh. That's what he had, and that's what he taught from. And so he says, as touching the righteousness that's in this book, in the Torah, he says, I'm blameless. I'm blameless. And he goes on to say, even though he has this long pedigree, yet he says, to know Christ and to know who Christ is, he said he would rather lose all of that he might gain Christ. That's how the Mashiach has to be that important unto you. That I'd rather, hey, I know I'm following Torah and everything, but if I don't have the Mashiach, what's it all for? And that's what he's saying. He's saying, hey, if I don't have Yahushua Mashiach, even though I'm a Pharisee, touching the righteousness of the law, I'm a Hebrew, a Benjamite, I'm of the stock of Yasharel. Look at all this stuff. But he says, if I don't have the Mashiach, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. So the most important thing is we have to have the Mashiach. But now that I have the Mashiach, do I throw away the law? So let's look at Romans. Let's look at Romans 3 and verse number 31. Look at Romans 3:31. And he says, do we then make void the law through faith? Faith because the law teaches of faith. Didn't we see that? So, yeah, exactly. So do we then make void the law through faith? Because a lot of people say, well, I got faith in Jesus Christ. I got faith in the Messiah. I got faith in Mashiach. I don't need the law because I got faith in Mashiach. Well, do we do away with the law because of faith? He says, Yah forbid. Yea, we establish the law. And the way we establish it is through the righteousness of it. I establish the law through the righteousness of it. I don't do away with it. It teaches me because in Romans chapter 7 and verse number 12. I'm going to read 12 and verse number 14. I'm going to read 13 too. Romans 7, 12, 13, and 14. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just and good. So am I going to do away with what is holy? No. We're not doing away with what is holy. The commandment is holy. That's why Yahushua says, you've loved me, keep my commandments. Commandment is holy. Was then that which is good made death unto me? So what is he talking about? Was the law which is good made death unto me? What did he say? Yah forbid. But sin. So, and this goes with Galatians, like we was reading Galatians 2 and 19, where it talks about being dead. We got to be dead to the law of sin, not because he says here, was then that which is good, and he just got through saying the law was good, made death unto me? No, Yah forbid. But sin, that it might appear sin, working death in me by that which is good, which is the law, that sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. So when you commit a sin and then you go to Torah and and you look at Torah, then it becomes exceeding sinful. We got to get to some place before we finish tonight, because I want to answer Koti Kelly's question for that. Verse number 14, for we know that the law is spiritual. I can't just look at the letter of the law. That's going to kill me. I have to understand that the law is spiritual. It is spiritual. But I'm carnal and I'm sold under sin, or I'm sold under the law of sin. Who sold me unto the law of sin? He sold us all. He sold us all into sin. Adam sold all of us into sin. So I'm sold under sin through our first father, which is Adam. And he lost it because of what? Who caused him to lose? Disobedient, but why was he disobedient? Who? His wife. His wife, a woman, influenced him. And he sold the whole human race in sin over a woman. Women are very powerful. Women are very powerful. And Adam loved Eve. he loved her to death. When you say somebody he loved her to death because he knew he was going to die, but he did it anyway because he loved her. So we were so under sin, but we have to understand that the law is spiritual and I'm carnal. The law is holy, the commandment is holy, and the commandment is just, and the commandment is good. You don't want to throw that away. You don't want to throw that away. Now, we got to get to some place that, because a lot of times I might not have book, chapter, and verse, but if I understand that the law is spiritual and it's dealing with my spiritual man and it's dealing with my conscience. See, the law's got to get into your conscience because that's where that's where the ruach is. See, when he made Adam, he was a body and what? He was a body and soul. He made Adam, he was a body and soul. He had to breathe what into him? The breath of life, or the ruach, or the spirit in him. Then he became a living soul. The living soul. The soul doesn't come to life unless you have the ruach from Elohim. And that ruach from Elohim gets into your consciousness. My conscience is where, when I read and study the law, it has to get into my consciousness. I'm not walking around here every day trying to find and I know we wear zizits and we have the prayer cloth and it has scriptures on it and everything, but that has to get into my heart. It's got to get into my consciousness. I have to understand the spirit of the law, because when I understand the spirit of the law, it gets a little deeper. In James chapter 4, Jacob chapter 4, they call him James, his name is Jacob. Chapter 4, verse 17. Verse 17. Therefore, to him that, this is where we have to get to the spiritual side of it, where we have to really understand that Torah, and if I'm a Torah scroll, therefore to him that knoweth to do good, not only what's written in Torah, but understanding that Torah has to get into my consciousness. Now my whole life has to bear goodness or righteousness. All of it has to be there for me. Because he says, therefore, to him that knoweth to do what? Good, and doeth it not, to him it's what? Sin. And sin is what? You know, and this is where there's some things that I really have to get rid of, because this is where some of that agent of sin comes in. I know to do good. You have to teach us to do evil. Some people say, I don't know about that because that human flesh is... But a child is born, and if you put a child and you give them, it says in 1 Corinthians 7th chapter, you got saved parent, that child will be what? In the 1 Corinthians 7th chapter, it says that then are your children what? Holy. They're set apart. Your children are set apart because of the environment and because of the teaching. He even told Timotheus, he says, I know who you are. I know the stock you come from. Why did he say that? Because he said, I know your, what did he say? I know your mother and your grandmother. I know where you come from. Your mama and your grandmother. Now, Timotheus' father was a Greek, but his mother and grandmother were Hebrew. They were Hebrewists. So the teaching comes in. When you teach a child and train up a child in the way he should go, when they get old, they don't depart from it. But you can teach this, and so a child starts growing and starts learning. There's something in their consciousness. I'm not saying they won't do wrong or they won't, try you and test you. But there's something in their consciousness. You can almost tell, hey, boy, I know you did something wrong. You need to tell me what because I can just tell. I can just tell. Fathers and mothers can pick up on the spirit or the ruach of their child. So they can tell when their child, boy, I know you did something wrong. I don't know what you did, but I know you did. I can feel it. I just know it. Because when you know to do good, I knew I shouldn't have been there. I went to that house party. I knew I shouldn't have been there. You have some virgin, because I know daughters that have lost their virginity at house parties. So when you know to do good and you don't do it, that's sin to you. What did you just do? What did you just break? You broke the law. You just broke the law because sin is what? Transgression of the law. Because a lot of times we want to have clear definition. I want you to clearly define it for me because I don't want to mess up. I want to know exactly. Well, when you know to do good and you don't do it, it's good for me to be in certain places, then it's not good for me to be in certain places. It's good for me to come into the house of Yah. And when all provisions are there for me to come into the house of Yah, but then I don't do it, well, then to you, that's a sin. I didn't sin. I didn't break the laws of God. No, sin is a transgression of his law. There's a law that he teaches us that we're to do good. And then we don't do that, then we just broke his law. Because his law is, if you know to do good, what are you supposed to do? Do good. That's why when I know better, I got to do better. I know better now. I haven't always known this. The path of life that we're going, I haven't always known this, but now that I know it, I know to do good. Now, if I don't do it, now that's a sin. That becomes a sin. And sin is a transgression of the law. So as I'm coming closer to Pesach and unleavened bread, these are the days of unleavened bread, I'm doing some searching. And I'm looking inwardly at me. So in 1 Corinthians, let's finish here. We're going to finish here. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Oh, let's go down to let's start at verse 26. Because when he talks about he took the cup and he took the bread, when did he do that? What was he keeping? He was keeping Passover. He was keeping Passover. So he says, verse 26, for as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show Yahushua's death till he come, which every time we keep Passover, we're memorializing his death, because on the 14th day of the month of Abib, which was Pesach, what happened to that lamb? He killed the lamb. And that's why he said, you do this, it's an ordinance to do it forever. You don't stop. Because on the 14th day of Abib, Yahushua was slain. They took his life. They took his life. He was slain. So this is when he said before his death. So he says, as often as you do this, as often as we keep Pesach, we're showing his. So if you've lived all your life and you've never kept Pesach, you haven't shown his death. But now that I know better, because for me, when I know to do good, if I don't do it, now I've sinned. So I show his death till he come. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of Yahusha unworthily shall be guilty of the body and the blood of Yahusha. And we don't want to be guilty of that. So what prevents me from being guilty of that? Well, he says in verse number 28, he says, but let a man examine himself. And that's the days of unleavened bread that we're getting into, where we have to really examine ourselves. And when you do the examination, I got to get rid of all this stuff. Now, there's some things I put out in our chat on Telegram, some of the things that we should be, and those are just some things. There could be some other things. Because remember now, if you know to do good and you don't do it, well, then you just broke his law. Because that's a law. You mean that's a law? That's a law of Elohim. You mean I know how to treat my brother, but I ain't gonna do it like that? Instead, I'm gonna lie in wait to trip him up? Well, you just sinned. That's a sin. Give me book, chapter, and verse. Well, the law of Elohim is when you know to do good and you don't do it, it's sin. So if you have, you're going through your preparation and you're getting rid of a lot of stuff, and this is where we have to be very careful, because as you examine yourself and you start to make vows, that's why he says when you come into the sanctuary, be more ready to hear than to, because your mouth can cause your flesh to sin. Because if you make a vow to Elohim, he expects you to keep that vow. So if I make a vow, let's say I make a vow, I'm a vow to pray every morning and not turn that TV on until I get my prayers through. And then you start off good for a while. Then all of a sudden, you got up late one morning, your day got busy, you turned TV on, I forgot to pray. Well, you made that vow. So you should, I know, then you got to, Abba, Yah, forgive me. Please forgive me. I mean, if you make a vow to him, see, you're very conscious of it. See, it gets in your consciousness. So, I kept a vow. And then if you keep a vow, you want to say it forever, or do you want to say, I'm going to do this until next Pesach? Or I'm going to keep this vow until atonement. 6 months. 6 months. I'm going to keep this. It's actually 6 months, because atonement's in the 7th month. We're in the 1st month. Atonement's in the 7th month. So I want to keep this vow for 6 months. And I'm just using these as examples. So if you're cleaning up your house, your temple, your body, you're looking at improve. Hey, I got to put away. I'm gonna put away, because one thing that I've done, I had to fast from gangster movies. I used to like watching gangster movies now. That was, I would be clicking, ooh, gangster movies, gangster. So I had to fast from it to where I just wasn't. Because, see, when you fast, you put away. See, we always think fast is food. Fast is more than food. Fast, you can give up something. I'm a fast, this, for example, this next football season, NFL season, I'm a fast from NFL football. Now, I'm not saying, I'm just using that as an example. So I'm just using that as an example. I'm not, Father, I'm not speaking that. I'm just using that as an example, because I don't want to commit to something and then, well, it's not the NFL, it's college. I don't want to do that. So if I commit to something, then I have to keep it. And you might want to say, I'm going through unleavened bread, and I notice And I just want to pray every morning when I get up. That I'm going to commit to that until atonement. Every morning I get up, you know. So if you say that, you give it as a vow, then you have to keep it. He expects you to keep that vow. You know. If you make, you know, some people make, and that's why I was so nervous. And I just went, because I was sitting over here, y'all need to make a vow. We need to pay, you know, make a vow to pay $50, $100. Man, I'd be sitting there nervous. Because I didn't want to make no vow like that. Because I don't know if I can keep that vow. Because when you make a vow like that, Most High Yah expects you to keep it. That's why a lot of times I wouldn't raise my hand. Or if I did, I'll do it one time. You know, I'm not going to commit to something that I don't know if I can keep it and fulfill it. There's just some things I was just real nervous about. And see, we have to understand Torah so that we're not clipped or, you know, taken advantage of or something like that, because you can get in trouble with Yah. Because if you make a vow unto Yah, he expects you to keep it. You got to keep that vow. And sometimes we make a vow. I made a vow. You know that song we used to sing. I made a vow to the Lord and I won't take it back. I made a vow to the Lord and I won't take it back. And next week you broke it. Oh no, Yah expects you to keep that vow. Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to be careful, you know. And so we, you know, sowing seeds and stuff. I did it once and it didn't come to pass. I'm not gonna keep doing that. I think it's just to get people's money. I'm not doing that. Yes. You know, I don't know, but you know, it's to get money, but you know, because we were supposed to pray and ask him for something, and it was Brian Karn that was there when I was in Indianapolis. And he pray and ask him, and you sow this seed. You got some sowing, you know, and I sowed a seed. I ain't gonna say how much money, and I gave it and sowed a seed. I say that prayer, and I wanted it to go. It didn't happen. You know, it didn't happen. So now some people say you might not believe it hard enough. Yeah, well, how hard you have to believe it? I mean, I'm believing. That's why I said it, and I gave it because I believe. I want it to happen, and it's fake, but. It wasn't nothing, it wasn't like, you know, I want a Maserati or Lamborghini. It wasn't outrageous, or it wasn't nothing like that. It wasn't no new house, or it wasn't nothing. It was something that was kind of simple. $1 million, that wasn't it. You know, that wasn't it. It was just something kind of simple, and it didn't happen. So I don't believe in that. You know, I think they just do that. It's just a game. It's just those toys in church that they do, because he says we're to give, and we're to give of our abundance, and he says that he'll bless us. It'll, you know, pressed down, shaken over, you know, we'll give, but he wants you to be a cheerful giver. And there's different offerings in Torah. One offering was everybody is supposed to give the same thing. It didn't matter how rich you were or how poor you were. Everybody's supposed to give the same offering. That was one offering, but then there was other offerings, and so when we look at doing good, my time is up. Okay, but we have to do this self-examination. We have to really look deep into ourselves and clean up. There should be something you can do, because the largest room in the world is room for improvement. And if you make a vow on witnessing, or if you make a vow on winning, you know, I want to win by atonement or Pesach next year, I want to win 10 souls. And you make that vow, well, Abba Yah expects you to do that. You know, I want to win 10 people in 12 months. Or to atonement, or any kind of vow. I'm just throwing these out as examples. I'm not saying that you have to do that. But when we look at cleanup, we might want to get rid of some things in our houses that's causing us to sin. It might be something on your phone or something on your tablet. There's certain apps. I got getting that off there, because it might put me in a position to where I'm going to sin. You know, man, I tell you what would be hard for me is to give up my cell phone and device. That would be hard. So I'm not going to make that vow, because I know. Because this thing is it's like my hand now. I mean, it is. It's like my hand. I mean, you know, and it's a communication tool. And it's Akeem. I mean, we stay communicated. I communicate with Isaac over in Ghana, you know. And so, I mean, it's a communication tool. And, man, if I had to give it up, I'm be honest, it'd be tough, you know.
I go out the house sometime and I forget mine, you know, and I get where I'm going and might need it and it's not there, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, oh my goodness. But the kids would always get upset with me and say, we've been calling you.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of my dad, because my dad had a cell phone, and it just stayed on the kitchen table. That's where it was, you know. And we calling Dad, you gonna answer your phone? Dad, where's your phone? He pointed, it's right there. I mean, it was just right there on the kitchen table. He wouldn't answer it. He didn't take it with him or anything. And I mean, that's good. I kind of wish I could get away from being tethered to it. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm tethered to it now. And even when I was working for Arconic, and I mean, we were tethered to our phones. It was, man, you couldn't, and if you didn't answer your phone or get back to your manager or something, oh man. And sometimes they call you at night, say, hey, I ain't even at work. You know? But I mean, we were so tethered to it, and it's tough. So I ain't making no vows like that. But there might be something on your phone that you might want to get rid of, you know, that might cause me to sin or something. And I mean, I don't traffic on Facebook, and I'm not saying that that's a sin, because we're up on 2 platforms, YouTube and Facebook. We're on those platforms, but I don't traffic out there. Yeah, and I mean, to some people, it's just that's their world. This is my opening to the world. This is my portal to the world. Yeah. And I remember one time, my wife would tell you, we sat down at the kitchen table with my 3 kids, and everybody had phones. Okay, we're having dinner. You got to put your phones down. Turn them off or whatever. We're going to sit down and have dinner. No phones. Sometimes you have to do that. You know, we're going to have, as a family, we're going to sit here and eat, talk, and no phones. You know?
And somebody was like, I think it was Kaviana was on the phone, you know, just nonstop. And so then I texted her and I said, what are you doing? And she looked up at me and she said, I'm sitting right here. What are you doing? I said, because you're not talking to anybody, you're not looking at anybody, but you're on the phone.
Yeah. And I mean, it's what they've done to us, and we're attached to it. I'm gonna be honest. You know, it's like my hand now. I got 3 hands. It would be very difficult for me so I'm not making but we have to look at, you know, what, as we do a self-examination, it says, let a man examine himself first, and so that you be worthy. Because if you know to do good and you don't do it, that's a sin. If you know you got sin in your life and you're doing it unworthily, you know, it's like you're crucifying him what? Afresh. You put him to an open shame. So any questions, comments out there? Questions, comments? We thank everybody for being here tonight, those who are in the platforms that we're on, Zoom and YouTube. We do invite you back to our Shabbat service we'll have on this Shabbat. And looking forward to Pesach. We're having Pesach here in Bittendorf, Iowa. We've got the Zachinium that's coming from Boston, Massachusetts, Indianapolis, Indiana, Flint, Michigan, and Cherry Valley, Arkansas. So we got our Pesach coming up. We got Zakines that are going to be here, and we've got guests coming in as far away as California and Florida that'll be coming in. So we invite everyone to come on out with us and keep the Passover. It is a command. It is a command to keep his Passover, because it's not ours. It belongs to Abba Yah. It's his Passover. And this is when he gave his only begotten son. He gave his only begotten son. So this is, it's a time for us to remember and honor his death. We do show his death till he comes. And Yahusha said he's not going to drink of that cup. And he wasn't drinking no grape juice, but he's not going to drink of that cup until he drinks it with us. And so he's going to keep Pesach. When he returns and he's going to be with us, he's going to keep Pesach. Some people want, you still go, Yahusha, you still keeping Pesach? Yeah, I said I'm going to keep it. When I'm going to keep it anew with you. So Pesach, even when he returns, there's going to be Pesach. So this is, like it says, this is a great night to remember and to celebrate. And it's Happy New Year. This is our New Year. And yeah, Happy New Year. I had to look it up. I'm not sure. But we've got, I just want to say thank you to our Pesach team, those who are putting together the flyer, the program, and all of those who are working to have a successful and a spiritually successful Pesach. We've got hospitality team, we've got registration team, we've got transportation team, we've got material handling team, we have the praise, song of praise team, food, we got our chef, we have a professional chef coming in, preparing the food. You don't have to worry about preparing any food, and it's good. She knows how to prepare food. So we're going to have a good celebration. Good celebration. All right. So with that, I'm going to say Shalom, and see you on Shabbat.